The Vethkai hunting ground stretched across 3 moons of the Duskera system, a sprawling wilderness of obsidian rock and violet leaf forests where only the strongest were permitted to walk. It was sacred ground, earned ground, and Kalen had not earned it. That was the consensus among the Vethkai hunters the moment the young Terran stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the dark soil of their moon. He was 23 years old by human reckoning, lean, with the kind of quiet eyes that watched everything and said little. He carried a single pack, a battered field knife on his hip, and no weapon beyond that. He had been assigned here by the Galactic Integration Bureau as part of the Cross-Species Field Liaison Program, a diplomatic effort to embed young humans with allied species, building understanding through shared labor and life. The Vethkai had not been consulted on this arrangement. They were tall, gray-skinned, with 4 arms and angular faces built around wide golden eyes designed for low-light hunting. Their culture valued 3 things above all else: the hunt, the scar, and the silence of earned respect. Words meant nothing to them, only what you survived. Elder Driven, their clan leader, had accepted Kalen's placement only because the Bureau had offered favorable trade routes in exchange. He made no effort to hide his contempt. "The soft skin will observe," Driven announced to the assembled clan on the first morning, switching to the common tongue with visible effort. "He will not hunt. He will not carry weapons beyond that child's blade he wears. He will not speak unless spoken to." He glanced at Kalen the way one glances at mud tracked onto a clean floor. "He is here to watch and learn what real hunters are." Low laughter moved through the assembled Vethkai. Kalen said nothing. He simply adjusted the strap of his pack and looked toward the treeline. The first week was designed to break him. Not openly. The Vethkai were too proud for obvious cruelty. But the assignments given to Kalen were chosen carefully. He was sent to carry the offal buckets from the processing yard each morning before sunrise. He was made to sleep in the equipment shelter rather than the communal lodge. His meals came after everyone else had eaten, which often meant scraps. The younger hunters, emboldened by Driven's tone, added their own flavors to the humiliation. They would speak about him in their native Vethkai tongue, loud enough for him to hear, knowing he didn't understand. They would leave hunting trophies outside his shelter door, not as gifts, but as reminders. "This is what a hunter earns. You have nothing." One of them, a young male named Reth, made a particular hobby of it. He was fast, decorated with the bone bead markings of 3 successful apex hunts, and he wore his contempt the way others wore armor. "Terran," he called out one afternoon as Kalen hauled water canisters toward the camp kitchen, "how does it feel to carry what the females used to carry before we had machines?" More laughter. Kalen set down the canisters, straightened his back, and looked at Reth for a long moment. "Heavy," he said simply. Then he picked them up and kept walking. The 15th day changed everything. A Duskera apex predator, what the Vethkai called a Vorsketh, had been spotted near the eastern perimeter of the camp. It was a 6-limbed ambush hunter the size of a terrestrial rhinoceros, covered in layered hide that absorbed sound. It could sit completely motionless for 18 hours before striking. And it had been sitting, it turned out, less than 40 meters from where Kalen slept. Celera found it first. She was not young, a senior huntress, one of only 3 females who had earned the bone bead markings in the clan's recent history. She moved through the eastern brush on a routine perimeter sweep, and she nearly stepped directly into the Vorsketh's kill range before she caught herself. She froze. She had her spear. She had her short blade. She was also completely alone, and the Vorsketh had already shifted. It had sensed her. The ambush posture was breaking. It was about to become a chase. Celera ran. The Vorsketh came out of the brush like an avalanche. What happened next? 3 Vethkai witnesses would argue about for months. Kalen had been collecting fire fuel at the edge of camp when he heard the crack of breaking branches. He turned. He saw Celera. He saw what was behind her. And he did something none of the Vethkai expected. He ran toward it. Not with a weapon raised. Not with a battle cry. He sprinted directly at the charging Vorsketh at a diagonal angle, closing distance rapidly, and then at the last possible moment, when the predator's attention locked onto this new, strange, suicidal threat, he dropped flat to the ground and rolled hard to the left. The Vorsketh overshot. It was a technique, Kalen would explain later, from something called bullfighting, a human cultural practice he had studied in school. Use momentum. Use angles. Use the predator's own commitment against it. The creature spun, confused and furious, and that was enough. Celera had gained 20 meters. She turned, drew her spear, and by the time the Vorsketh registered that she had stopped running, Kalen was back on his feet and throwing a piece of burning firewood directly into its face. It roared. It retreated. 3 senior hunters arrived within seconds, alerted by the noise, and drove it back into the deeper forest. Silence fell over the camp perimeter. Celera stood breathing hard, spear still raised, staring at the young Terran standing in the clearing with singed hands and absolutely no readable expression on his face. "You ran at it," she said in the common tongue. "It was faster than you," Kalen said. "Running away wasn't going to work. You had no weapon. I had fire and angles." He paused. "And you had the spear. I just needed to give you time to use it." Celera looked at him for a very long moment. The Vethkai did not have a tradition of verbal gratitude. Thanks was considered an insult among their kind, implying the saved person was incapable of returning the favor. Instead, she reached up and unclipped one of the bone beads from her own markings. She held it out. Kalen took it without speaking. That was the correct response. He did not know their customs. He had simply done what felt right. But it was exactly right. Solara's eyes held something they had not held before when looking at him. The change in camp did not happen overnight, but it happened. Celera began walking the morning perimeter sweep with Kalen. Not out of charity, out of curiosity. She started asking him questions. What other techniques did humans use against larger predators? What was this bullfighting? Did all humans study it? He told her honestly, most did not. He had simply been interested in it. He had been interested in a lot of things that seemed useless at the time. She told him this was a Vethkai concept too. The knowledge that has no application until it does. Dreven watched this with visible discomfort, but said nothing. The bone bead spoke for itself. Reth, to his credit, came to Kalen's shelter on the 16th evening. He stood in the doorway for a moment, and then said, in awkward but careful common tongue, "I was not correct in my assessment." It was as close to an apology as the Vethkai language allowed. Kalen nodded. "I figured you'd work it out eventually." Reth almost smiled. "You are strange, Terran." "Yeah," Kalen agreed. "We get that a lot." On the 40th day, the clan gathered for the Korvan, the seasonal hunt ceremony. It was the most sacred event in the Vethkai calendar. Participants were announced by name by the elder, each one formally recognized before the clan. Dreven stood at the head of the fire circle. He read the names slowly, with gravity. Each hunter stepped forward as called. When he reached the end of the list, he paused. The pause lasted just long enough that everyone noticed it. Then Dreven said, in Vethkai, a word that needed no translation, because every human who had ever spent time with the clan had learned it first. "Volcane, brother who hunts beside us." And then, louder, in the common tongue so Kalen would understand. "Kalen of Terra, step forward." Kalen stood at the edge of the fire circle in his battered jacket, singed hands, and the single bone bead on a cord around his neck. He stepped forward. The clan beat their hands against their chests, the Vethkai sign of recognition. Even Reth, even Dreven. Celera watched from across the fire, and for just a moment, she allowed herself something the Vethkai rarely showed in public. A look of complete, uncomplicated pride. Later, when the Integration Bureau asked Kalen to file his cultural exchange report, he wrote one line. They didn't need to be impressed. They needed to see something real. Turns out humans have a lot of that.